Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
What do you do if you've been in power for a decade and face attacks from a resurgent left and right? SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon took on that challenge today when she spelled out her Scottish Government's plans for the coming 12 months. The 1% limit on public sector pay will go, putting pressure on the Tories in Westminster to follow suit. In a moment, we will hear from the two candidates running to lead Scottish Labour on whether Sturgeon's hints on tax increases will keep their party at bay. But first, Michael Crick joins us from Edinburgh. Michael.
Yes, well, Nicola Sturgeon today was unveiling her programme for government, which is a sort of Scottish version of the annual Queen's speech, only without the Queen or without the flummery, without the ritual and people wearing strange clothes. Now, in June, in the general election, the SNP lost 21 of their MPs to a resurgent Conservative Party and to some extent a resurgent Labour Party as well. And many people think that that was due to the fact that some Scottish voters clearly weren't keen on the idea of another referendum on independence. So today's programme was designed to be about what the SNP regards as radical measures, their most ambitious, yet very little said about the referendum pledge. Instead, perhaps the highlight of this was the pledge really to end, or at least to ease, austerity in Scotland. Last week, ahead of yesterday's official opening by the Queen, Scotland's First Minister lit up the new Queensferry crossing. The second road bridge across the Firth of Forth marks 10 years of SNP rule in Scotland. But today, Nicola Sturgeon tried to start a new chapter for her party, with distinctively left-wing policies such as scrapping the public sector pay cap here.
The pay cap, while never desirable, was necessary to protect jobs and services. However, with inflation on the rise, it is not sustainable. Our nurses, teachers, police officers and firefighters deserve a fairer deal for the future. Indeed, the need to recruit the staff that our public services depend on also demands a new approach.
Nicola Sturgeon's speech was full of other policies where the SNP seems to be moving into Labour territory. The new Scottish investment bank they propose, extra spending on health, benefits and housing. But perhaps the biggest conundrum for Labour could be her announcement that they're going to consider using the Scottish Parliament's tax-raising powers to raise the level of income tax here above that in the rest of the UK. Will Labour support that?
Well, we've a very clear policy that we want to use the powers. We want to raise £500 million to stop the cuts that are taking place in local public services.
And that will be what on income tax, a penny?
Well, that would be a penny on income tax. We also want to raise the top rate to 50p.
Scottish Tories would welcome scrapping the pay cap, but not tax rises.
Well, we're already the highest tax part of the United Kingdom. Scotland already has income tax band differentials from the rest of the UK, and as it happens, we also happen to be one of the slowest growing parts of the United Kingdom. Now, I don't think that that's coincidence. What I don't want is a Scottish Government dipping more and more into the back pockets of Scotland's workers when we've got a slow economy, when they could be putting their efforts into some genuine growth.
It's their most ambitious programme yet, claim the SNP. But many people near the new Forth Bridge, SNP voters among them, struggle to say what they've done these last 10 years.
Well, I'm quite a fan of the SNP, but I do think they have their issues as well. I think education's an area they kind of need to work on. But, you know, I think they brought a different kind of face to Scottish politics.
They could do a lot more for the economy. They spend too much time thinking about independence.
And what do you think they've achieved in the 10 years they've been in power?
I don't really think they've achieved anything that I can think of.
SNP are right down to earth. I used to be a Labour supporter. Labour's Labour's not Labour anymore.
Even SNP supporters struggle to name achievements of your 10 years in power.
Oh, well, let me start. Let me start with free prescriptions, with free university education, so that our young people can follow their education and their ambitions regardless of where they come from. Let me talk about investment in our infrastructure, the completion of the M8, the dualling of the A9, much promised for years by previous parties, now delivered by this government.
The SNP now has to make an impact not just on bridges and roads, but health, schools and the economy, all beset by poor figures. As for their second referendum on independence, that today barely featured.
Well, the Labour Party in Scotland accused the Scottish Government today of being closed to advice, ideas and experience. Following Kezia Dugdale's resignation as leader of the party north of the border, two men are vying to become Scottish Labour's sixth leader since the SNP took power 10 years ago. And they join me now. Anna Sauer is a former deputy leader of the Scottish Labour Party. Richard Leonard is a former trade unionist from the pro-Jeremy Corbyn wing of the party. Welcome, gentlemen. Anna Sauer, if I can turn to you first of all. Are you a Blairite or a Corbynista?
Look, I'm a passionate socialist in the Labour Party, and I want to see a socialist Labour government right across the United Kingdom led by Jeremy Corbyn. But I also want to persuade people in Scotland that we need a Labour government and a Labour First Minister here in Scotland. I think the For the Many manifesto has energised our membership, has enthused the electorate. I want now to bring the Labour Party together in Scotland to deliver not only a UK Labour government but also a Scottish Labour government too. You've seen from your package today, we have huge challenges in Scotland.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm a little bit confused, you see, because last year in July, you signed a letter calling for Mr Corbyn to resign for the good of the party and the country. And then a few weeks ago, you were singing his praises, saying, where other leaders seek to divide, Jeremy seeks to unite. So which Anna Sauer am I talking to tonight?
Look, I wasn't the only one that was wrong about Jeremy Corbyn last year. My concern was that would he reach out to the public, and he has proven that he has reached out not only to the Labour Party but actually reached out to the public, and now we've got to get behind Jeremy Corbyn and make him Prime Minister. Look, I'll give another example. I didn't support Ed Miliband in the leadership contest. I still wanted him to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. I want Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, but this contest isn't about whether we support Jeremy Corbyn or not. I want all of us to support Jeremy Corbyn in the Labour Party. This contest is about how we expose the failures of the SNP, how we end Tory austerity, we get back to the issues that matter to the Scottish people and return a Labour government working for the many in Scotland and a Labour First Minister.
Well, you now say you're on board with the slogan for the many, not the few. Can I just ask you, how many Scots do you think can afford to spend £10,000 a year to send their children to private school in the way that you do?
Look, I have had a huge opportunity in Scotland. My grandparents came here in the 1940s to make a new life for themselves after the partition of India and Pakistan. They made a success of their families. My parents chose a certain school for me. I chose a school alongside my family that I thought was appropriate for my child. But we shouldn't just be promoting opportunity for our own children. I want every child to have opportunity in Scotland. And the reality is, under this SNP government, we have 4,000 fewer teachers in our schools. We see the attainment gap widening, and we see educational attainment levels falling. That's why we need a government for the many. That's why we need a government in Scotland for the many.
Excuse me, Mr Sauer, what you're saying is schools in Scotland that are not private are not good enough for your children.
I want every school to be excellent. I want every teacher in Scotland to have the resources they need to be able to give the best education to our children. I want opportunity for all kids right across Scotland, and at the moment that is being lost by this distracted SNP government that's more focused on trying to argue for another independence referendum. And we only get that education system for the many, we only get that NHS system that we so proudly fought for as a Labour movement if we have a radical Labour government, not just across the UK, but a radical Labour government right here in Scotland, and that's what I'm fighting for in this election.
OK, Anna Sauer, thank you very much. If we can just turn to Richard Leonard then. Mr Leonard, thanks for joining us. Can I just ask, you're a Yorkshireman. Do you think that matters?
Well, there's nothing I can do to change the fact that in 1962 I was born in Yorkshire. Actually, I've lived the vast majority of my life and pretty much all of my adult life in Scotland. So I've chosen to live in Scotland. This is where I've always worked. This is where my family is. And yeah, I'm fairly relaxed that Scotland is a very welcoming place. The people of Scotland, in my experience, are extremely tolerant. They've got a soft spot for people from Yorkshire. And so I'm quite relaxed that that's not an issue.
You've talked about opportunities that Scottish Labour has missed. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think in the recent general election campaign, it was pretty clear that Labour was standing on a radical programme to extend public ownership, to end austerity and to see a redistribution of power from the few to the many, and that Jeremy Corbyn's leadership was proving to be popular. And I think there was an opportunity during the course of the campaign in Scotland in which we concentrated pretty heavily on the Scottish constitutional question. I think there was an opportunity to change tack, to start sending out a message of hope to people, to say that the Labour Party stands for change, the Labour Party stands for the better society, and the Labour Party is once again standing up for its traditional values, and in so doing reached out and began to appeal to those people who had left their support for the Labour Party behind. People were reconnecting with the Labour Party, and that was a very powerful message. And I don't think in the Scottish Labour Party we sufficiently grasped that.
So whose fault was it that you didn't sufficiently grasp that? Kezia Dugdale?
Well, we take a collective responsibility for these things, don't we? And I think all I'm reflecting is that we as a party had an opportunity that we missed. Some people were speaking up during the course of the campaign to say that we needed to tap in to the popularity which there was behind that manifesto, which there was behind Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, and we failed to do it sufficiently well. So there are lessons to be learned. I would only say that my politics have been pretty consistent with that message in the 2017 manifesto, and that's why I'm fairly relaxed that I do represent a credible spokesperson, a credible potential leader for the Scottish Labour Party.
So you're Jeremy Corbyn's man, aren't you? Are you going to purge Scottish Labour of anti-Corbyn forces?
No, not at all. Absolutely not. I mean, I have been in the Scottish Labour Party for over 30 years. I've worked with all wings of the Labour Party. I don't see myself as being in any camp or clique at all. I've never, as it's happened, I've joined any factions inside the Labour Party. People say I'm a member of the Campaign for Socialism. Actually, I'm not. I wouldn't describe myself as a Corbynista. I'm a bit too long in the tooth for that, I think.
Why did you vote alongside the Scottish Tories when it came to Brexit? You voted alongside the Tories?
Personally, I voted to remain in the EU referendum, as did large numbers of people inside the Labour Party. I think Labour voters predominantly voted to remain. The Labour Party campaigned for a Remain vote. I was part of that mainstream.
OK, Richard Leonard, thanks very much.
Thank you.